a new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms new dawn today. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unpanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Our Father, bless this podcast and bless all of you as we join in. It is 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Happy Friday. Have a very blessed weekend. And let's get started with the show. This is a deep dive. The Son of Man, the Son of God, the Jewish Gospels, Hebrew Scripture combining with the New Covenant. Let's dive right in, and I will see you on the other side. As for
Hey
me,
guys,
Daniel, my spirit was troubled within me, and the visions of my head terrified me. I approached one of the attendants to ask him the truth concerning all this. So he said that he would disclose to me the interpretation of the matter. As for these 4 great beasts, 4 kings shall arise out of the earth, for the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever and ever. Where's that passage from, everybody? Trivia for all you nerds out there. No takers? Nothing even from you, Andrew? Welcome to the 3 that have joined us earlier on. Thank you for joining. Go ahead, Andrew.
I couldn't give you an exact reference. Sorry.
Come on, man. You read this book, the Jewish Gospels, and he references it, and he actually puts it in there. It's out of Daniel 7, the book of Daniel. Probably the most prophetic. We just talked about the book of Daniel.
I know. You'd forgive me. I'm retarded.
So you are pretty retarded. You're dangerously retarded. And that's why we love you, Andrew. You have to be a dangerous retard in order to be able to decipher what is true from what is interpretation. And that's where we're going. That's what this book is. This book right here,
The
called the Jewish Gospels, the story of the Jewish Christ, by I believe he's a rabbi, Daniel Boyarin. This one's going to piss off Sean right here. He is a Talmudic or rabbinic Jew, obviously. There are some interpretations within the Talmud that are a little dicey, I will say. But there are
Spicy?
certain, a little spicy, yeah, a little dicey, a little spicy. There are also people that interpret the gospel, that interpret both the New Testament and the Old Testament alike on the Christian sector that do it for nefarious reasons as well, to uphold whatever stick twisted, evil, sadistic ideology that they circumnavigate, like Obama with his Christian rhetoric and murdering a 16-year-old American citizen with a drone strike. I think it was a drone strike because his father was a very bad man.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
that's Obama for you. He'd do anything he can get away with.
yeah. So Christianity, it just like any religion, it's muddled. Every religion in the history of mankind is utilized for negative influences. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about a positive influence. We're here to decipher whether or not the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, the Torah as it is referred, actually interprets the coming of the Son of Man. And I say Son of Man, you're going to see me reference Son of Man because we get it a little wrong in the deciphering of what Son of Man means. If you were a layman and you haven't read this book or looked at scripture and been open-minded, what would Son of Man to you, Andrew, mean? What would Son of Man mean to you?
Man, Son of Man. I'd imagine, it would be the identity of all human beings at one stage in development.
So the human quality.
Yeah.
The human quality. So he references this a lot in the chapter 1, and it seems the interpretation might be a little wrong. Son of God, Son of Man, you would think Son of God, Messiah, messianic, messianic prophecy of the Son of God coming to earth, Jesus being the Christ, the Logos, the essence of God, and that's what Son of God would pertain to.
All right.
It does not, and it even mentions this. I would go back to all you Christians or all you biblical scholars out there, even if you're not Christians. I would go back into the Old Testament, dive deep, and transcribe this, because the Son of God is that of the Davidic line in Judaism. It is the Messiah, but it is the humanly King, Son of God, Son of God. You have been bestowed. You have been anointed. You are Christos. You are Messiah. You are the anointed one of God, the King of the Israelites, the King of the Jews. Son of Man, let's flip it, isn't the human quality that Jesus is referring to himself as, because he refers to himself as the Son of Man in the gospel, at least indirectly or directly, both. Son of Man is the direct line to God. He is literally telling you straight up front, direct, blunt as fuck about it. I'm God. I'm the Son of God. I am God. I am God in the flesh. I am the Son of Man. Now, that is very interesting that you would say Son of Man, absent of the human quality and more of the divine quality, and Son of God as the human quality of the anointed one of God. But it does make sense because God anoints.
It does.
And I find that very, very fascinating just on that tidbit. So any words for you, Andrew?
Well, when we was reading this book, it really kind of the way he approached it is basically he laid it out like a framework, like a roadmap, right? And so he he tried to make the case that uh, the with the loss of the line of David, right? Uh, Jesus is moving forward, is picking up that line and moving. I don't want to say move the goalpost, but uh,
Mythical.
providing providing for a refresher to that line and making a new compact, a new covenant for people to look forward to in the future.
What is that new covenant?
Well, uh,
Why did Jesus come?
to provide salvation for our flawed for our flaws.
Very good answer. Very good. I'm going to make you a good Catholic after all. So you're going to be a very fabulous convert to the Catholic Church. We're going to get you baptized in the Catholic Church very soon.
How can I work under this pressure? I'm out of here.
But very good. Yeah, effectively that's the whole idea of the messianic line and why God gave his only begotten son, begotten, adopted, effectively for the most part. He was unmade. Um, he's adopted through being unmade because he always existed. That's what begotten means. So, was it though that as we go further, could it be that Jesus was adopted as God and the man became divinity? This has been the argument and became divine, which kind of breaks the Trinity aspect um and actually creates Christianity into a pseudo paganist idea if he was made God.
Yeah.
But I guess it really wouldn't. But was God? Yeah, because he's made God into the alignment of God, into the essence. But as you tell in the first line of the Gospel of John, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was, or the and the in the beginning. I'm butchering this badly. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So that line tells me that Jesus was always God. But is it that Jesus was adopted into a line with God, into alignment with God to become God, a part of God as another person that is of God? Or was Jesus always God?
I think they're saying they're talking about that in the book, and sorry, what the case that they made was that God was Jesus as God was always within the picture. So Daniel was talking. His interpretation was that there was a younger representative at the throne of Yahweh, and then there was Yahweh himself.
Almost like combining, going way back, the Ancient of Days deity combining with the essence of the Son of Man and having a divine quality to the nature of a man whom is God.
Yeah.
But, I mean, could it be that we're just misconstruing all of this and trying and ignoring history and how ancient cultures, especially with it being pagan, they utilize their symbology within their mythos to structuralize what is really going on because they didn't have the words or the concepts like we do today, or and really all the ancient Israelites did was just carve out the god, a god from ancient Canaanite tribes, one of which would have been El or Yahweh, which would become the Hebrew El or Yahweh. It's very interesting because God does present himself as multiple in Genesis. And in Hebrew, there is the word Elohim, which means it's a plural form of God, of many. So what does that mean? What does applying Elohim for one God mean?
I mean, I couldn't say for sure. Obviously, I wasn't there, but I do see as similarities in the way that this people are interpreting the situation. It's kind of like bootstrapping to a network, right? You got to develop an understanding and build towards strength and eventually momentum in order to maintain some coexistence with the network that you're like the integration with the divine.
So they could just be integrating with one culture and pulling from it and creating their own monotheistic realm, which a lot of cultures did, by the way. I mean, the ancient Hebrews, they weren't what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't unique in the fastening of a one God theological idea. So they
Yeah,
weren't the only monotheists that did come about. What makes them unique is what their God, what Yahweh was to them. Whereas many other monotheists, like I know at one point in Egypt, Akhenaten actually experimented with monotheism and you worship the sun.
yeah,
So there's a different correlation there, but the concept of monotheism doesn't just begin with the Hebrews, with the ancient Israelites and ancient Canaan. But I digress. Could it be that maybe they're just integrating with the ancient Canaanite gods and pulling one and creating their own culture out of that? Or could it be that the true God was interpreted as being part of the pantheon of the Canaanite cultural and spiritual practices, whom revealed himself to ancient Hebrews or to ancient peoples like Abraham, that would obviously where the Israelites would come out of, their tribes would
yeah,
come out of through his
yeah.
lineage. So could it be that they're just pulling from one culture to create their own with one God, or could it be that the truth was revealed and that one true God came out of what they pulled and integrated from, breaking away from polytheism and reinventing and revigorating the objective truth that what has been and will always be one true God, and that is Yahweh.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
a lot of theological underpinnings is based off of a philosophy like Aristotle, right? Uh, this is just trying to establish a roadmap or a framework to build off of and move
mhm.
forward and to provide answers. And for every answer, there's two more questions, right? So it's a never ending story.
Would you like to watch a video, Andrew? Would everybody like to
Sure.
watch a video? Let's watch a video about the original gods of Israel, and let's see what we can
Okay.
pull from that. So we'll be back. We'll be back.
Which included the god El, Baal, and Yahweh, which all appear in the Bible. In time, the Israelites came to believe that they were not of Canaanite origin. Yet archaeological remains and linguistic and religious comparisons from 1200 to 1000 BC indicate that Israel formed within the Canaanite culture. In all these domains, there's just too big of an overlap, often to the point where they are indistinguishable. Yet Israel in time did break itself off from the other Canaanites, at least by 1208 BC, because both Canaan and Israel are mentioned as separate entities on the stele by Pharaoh Nermeptah. In a longer text celebrating Egypt's victory over its neighbors, we read the sentences, "Plundered is the Canaan," and also, "Israel is laid waste." Interestingly, the hieroglyphs used to denote Canaan signify that it is a land, while the glyph for Israel denotes that it is a people. The original god of the tribe of Israel seems to have been El, and there are a couple pieces of evidence for this. For one, even the word Israel itself means El rules. We get another clue by studying the different authors of the Bible, which were identified in the 19th century, because these authors used Hebrew from different historical periods. And these authors are now called the E, the J, and the P sources, and much more on them in the next lecture. In Genesis, source P and source E call God by the name El from the beginning, all the way up to the point where God reveals himself as Yahweh to Moses. We read, "I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. But by my name Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them." So here that name switch was incorporated into the story. Thirdly, 17 characters in Genesis have names compounded with El, such as Bethel, while there are no names that contain Yahweh. And interestingly, there is also one name compounded with Baal, namely Benjamin's son, Ashbal, which is curious since Baal would later be recognized as one of the false gods by the Israelis. We know about the Canaanite pantheon mainly from a number of texts on clay tablets from the 13th to 12th century BC, found in the city of Urugit in northern Syria. Among these texts we have found the Baal cycle, which describes a myth about the thunder god Baal. In the most memorable part of the Baal cycle, Baal was killed by Mot, the god of death, and then descended into the underworld. Being a weather god, the death of Baal was interpreted as the start of the summer drought season. And El, we read, the father of both Baal and Mot, mourned his death. The goddess Anat, Baal's sister, eventually found his body and buried him, and then went on to kill Mot in order to release Baal from the underworld. And interestingly, the killing of Mot was stated in agricultural terms. We read, "With a sword she splits him, with a sieve she winnows him, with a fire she burns him, with millstones she grinds him, in a field she sows him." Then we read, El had a dream in which the heavens rained down, which meant that Baal, the god of rain, had resurrected. Anat then found him, and he returned to his throne in his beautiful palace. In the text from Ugarit, we also read that the highest god El was married to the goddess Asherah, and that their children included the gods of the morning star, the evening star, the sun, and the moon. In some cases, Baal was also mentioned as one of their children. Other evidence from this pantheon comes from late 9th century BC potsherds found in the Sinai Peninsula. On one of the potsherds, we read, "Yahweh of Samaria and his Asherah," suggesting that the goddess was instead married to Yahweh. And quite shockingly, as you can see, there's even a picture that goes with this couple. Traces of these past polytheistic beliefs are also found in the Bible itself. In several passages, El is described as being the leader in a council of gods. These quotes seem to stem from a time before Judaism became monotheistic. For instance, we read, "For who in the skies above can compare with the Lord? Who is like the Lord among the heavenly beings? In the council of the holy ones, El is greatly feared. He is more awesome than all who surround him." And also, Elohim, also containing El, presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. There's also a verse in which we read that El, here seen as a god of the entire earth, divided up the nations of the world among his sons, giving Israel to his son Yahweh. So here El and Yahweh have not just fused into the same God. We read, when Elyon allotted the nations for inheritance, when he divided up humanity, he fixed the boundaries for people, according to the number of divine sons. For Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob his own inheritance. And that is about what we know about the origin of Yahweh. In the next lecture, we'll take a look at the development of Yahweh from a tribal and relatable God who walked among men into an abstract, transcendent God who authoritatively spoke from the heavens. We'll do this by diving deeper into the study.
Interesting. Thoughts, Andrew?
Well, I was talking about bootstrapping earlier, right? Another way to interpret it is it's building a foundational myth.
Is it also a coincidence that at Sinai, when Moses was handed the commandments, was given the new covenant of the law, that one of those commandments, one of the most esteemed of those commandments out of the first three, is thou shalt not worship other gods besides me.
I don't think it's a coincidence. No, I think it's like I said, it's building towards an identity and a foundational myth. So,
Is it a foundational myth? Because what they
Well-
believe is truth.
well, I'm not saying it's a myth. That's just a framework to put that the layman would understand, right?
So who is the foundational myth then? Is that the Canaanite pantheon, or is that the Israelites beginning their own foundational myth, taking from what they know and integrating gods of old into one enmeshed God in sequence?
Well, in wrestling terms, it could be kayfabe, right? You mix the truth with a lie. It's transgressing the old into interpreting a new identity.
So
As like I said in the
They
video, they talk about how that one of the god killed the other, and his sister continued on the tradition.
the sister continued on the tradition of what tradition? Of Baal?
Oh, the identity.
So she in order to preserve the identity and save the myth, she had to kill Mot and retrieve Baal from the underworld to
Mm,
bring him back to life,
yeah.
which seasonally, and what he brought up, agricultural seasons transcend from when the growing season and the harvest season, and then the drought season. So,
Yeah.
in agricultural terms, and many of the pantheons of gods in the past had their certain segments of power of worship for what they were being preyed upon for, or he sacrificed worship to strike abundance for, whether it was agriculture, whether it was fertility, you have it. Whether it was at times of war, you wanted to make sure that were building up the confidence to be able to fight and fulfill your conquest, whether offensive or defensive in any form of war. So I do find it quite interesting that you would pull all of this and then extrapolate it into one. And God would be, El was the head of an assembly of gods. God, Yahweh, or actually Yahweh, is the all encompassing, omniscient presence of the world, of the universe, who created and integrated and authoritatively manage how men are supposed to act,
You know,
limiting his
and
powers, of course.
I mean, you said, or it said in that video, and you mentioned the agriculture part. Well, there's a term for it's called confluence. It's the merging of rivers, and that's how you build strength and identity.
So this was the main frame, the structural integrity
And
of combining what your identity is eventually going to become.
and the longer it runs, the more strength it has, the more momentum it builds,
Hmm.
and you take off.
Now, considering we are discussing the Jewish gospel and what it entails and what Daniel Bo- Bo- Boyarin
Sorry, I don't speak Italian.
discussed it. I don't think it's Italian, buddy. Um, but what he tries to decipher is how do we get to a situation to where we can use scripture to call upon the fulfillment of prophecy to Jesus being the Messiah, the Son of Man, the Son of God, the one true God in flesh. And
Mm.
term that I'd like to discuss is Elohim, which is a plural for God or assembly of gods. So in this early mythos, obviously there was a set in the early pantheon of an assembly of God with a high God, most high, which actually is attributed in Genesis, especially when Abraham comes back from his war with his men to save Lot and destroy the, I believe it's the four kings,
Mm.
3 or 4 kings, and he returns and meets a king of Salem. I'm gonna butcher his name, Metziak. Whatever, I don't speak Italian. Whom refers
I don't think
to
it's Italian, buddy.
Yeah, who refers upon Abraham, God Most High, and it exclaims that he's a small character. He's really just there, and then he's not. We don't really get a whole explanation. Effectively exclaims that he is both king and priest of the God Most High, and Abraham, through respect and honor, gives a tenth of what he has. What do you say about that?
Well, I mean, it is definitely establishing, a precedent. I mean, we see that
It
in today's religious practices.
it is establishing a precedent, and Salem, for this kingdom, where this kingdom was in the land of Canaan, is ironically and coincidentally in the same location as another great holy city that is still fought over these many centuries, and especially today, Jerusalem. Jerusalem.
Mm.
Salem. Jerusalem. So,
That makes
interesting
sense.
correlation.
Yeah.
Interesting correlation. So, um, so Elohim effectively is assembly of gods. So with that pantheon in the early aspect of culture in this region, precluding to the ancient Israelites and their one God Yahweh, the Elohim be more of a reference to God, to Yahweh, referring that he is not alone within the essence of his own self, being the one and only God, for which there is an essence. As I said, in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Well, what I think about, maybe I could provide a little bit of different interpretation. What I was talking about earlier about the foundation, but maybe
Little
it's not so
nuance.
much as a nuance. Yeah, it's not so much as a a myth per se as passing the torch. Another way to interpret it.
Passing the torch. So El passes the torch to his son Yahweh, and Yahweh becomes all supreme, for
Hmm.
which Yahweh is supreme, and wins the day, and all the other gods rule into nothing. Which effectively, if you look at it, has been the case, because look at the three major religions in today, two of which are in the billions all across the world, Christianity and Islam. All three, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, respectively, believe in the one God. They all personify that they worship the same one God. I believe that the Jews kind of divert because they don't want to believe Jesus is the Son of Man, is God, is the Messiah. They're still waiting
Hmm.
for their Messiah. Though you do have a sect of Messianic Jews that are kind of gathering that perhaps Jesus was the Messiah, that was
Hmm.
prophesied in the Hebrew scriptures. You have Christianity, and then you have Islam that believes that Allah is alone. But Jesus is the Messiah. They do believe that. Jesus is the Messiah. They just believe that Allah is one and only within the heavens.
Well, let me push back on you a little bit. Maybe provide some context for us. Uh, in the book, they're talking about the identity of Jews, and as as a religious movement, how
Israelites.
it Israel how
A Jew
it
would be
came to
from
be an
Judah.
sorry, you'll
I'm
excuse
literal.
me. Oh, I'm retarded, so I'm literally retarded. Uh, no, they're talking about the foundation developed for a Judaic identity as a religious movement. And
Hmm.
where was that foundation established?
What the real? You asking me?
Yeah,
Where
what
was?
they're talking about in the book. Uh, in the book.
Yo, yo. Thank you for joining, Mark. Um, where was that founded? Like reason wise?
Well, like this, where was the identity segregated between
The idea.
uh,
You put me on the spot, man. Where was that? Oh yeah. Explain. I want to know your piece.
well, I was just figured. I mean, you read the book too, so I was just trying to
Oh,
give
I
something
did.
more to talk about.
I
But
mean, I identity wise, from yeah. I mean, that's a lot. That's harder to convolute, really, because we're. I
yeah,
mean, you could say that certain aspects that came together could have been not in the land of Canaan, but that of in Egypt, or perhaps earlier on within the initial settlement in Canaan,
hmm,
perhaps away from Canaan. But all, I mean, all the necessary pieces. I mean, they plug out from different
they build out.
aspects of the known world. So it's building. It's I mean, like especially if you look into the book of Job, like Job was not a Canaanite. Job was nowhere near Canaan,
Yeah,
right? So, but yet he was very much astute to what in terms the Hebrews would refer to as Yahweh. He was in tune to that one God, El, Yahweh, whomever you want to refer to, right? So I think the
I
it's a
think that
very loaded question because I honestly think the pieces were being built in other aspects regionally across the known land at that time for at least these people. So in
if I
their
remember
known
correctly
land.
from the book, they said it was the Council of Nicaea. Is that right?
Oh, you talking about the
In
Trinitarian
Turkey,
idea?
Yeah,
in
yeah,
in the beginning of in the book they do bring this up where they actually create the foundations, a mesh within grabbing a hold the more interpretive gospels and readings of the New Testament, combining with the prophecies of the Hebrew Scripture to show where it all comes together in upholding the Holy Trinity idea that Jesus is God in flesh, the Son, the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit. The Council of Nicaea eventually reinforced on a Christian. This would be the Christian perspective, and there's politics involved because I mean Constantine was using it as a political derivative to consolidate his power, but so there's a political move for Constantine, but the Council of Nicaea, where the early church fathers got together and essentially founded Christianity in the institution of a Trinity. Yes, I mean the book and where you're going at would have been the Council of Nicaea. Eventually, about like I think 80 years later, reinforced at the Council of Constantinople. I think 80 or 100 years later was and then reinforced again. So there was a couple of councils after that. So Nicaea would be where the Christian concept and the foundation of the Christian idea of where the Trinity began, and the foundations of the institution of Christianity bestowed upon a Trinity scenario, and that Jesus is of divine right, would have been the Council of Nicaea. I thought
okay.
you were referring, I thought you were referring to the buildup of the regional base and the mythos of the ancient past, and where the Israelites kind of led into their realm and their of culture, which it was building all around from
Well,
Canaan and ever.
I was just thinking, this is establishing divergence or segregation of identities, and he makes an interesting comparison, like in the beginning of the book, is that there's two brothers, right, and they both got strengths and weaknesses, and you would think that the way they specialize, you just stick with those, but they can still pull from each other and act accordingly as to what's necessary. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Sort of like in ancient Sumerian texts and mythos, attributing to Anki, the brothers Enlil and Anki, whom had their little brotherly feud of who should be reigning and how they should utilize their creation of man. And Anki being this goes ties into the Garden of Eden and kind of twists it to make it look like perhaps the serpent was the good guy, right? Because Anki would be the serpent in this scenario, and Enlil would be God. And Anki used the knowledge as a forebearer to help humans be raised up out of the darkness to be less of a slave mind and go forth. Obviously, maybe that's why if that's true, maybe that's why we're so backwards and still very savagely tribal in today's day and age, because perhaps we're not meant to have all that knowledge. But Enlil wanted to ensure that no, these are tools. Like we created them for a reason. Like this is our dominion. We've taken this dominion and we're using these people that we created through other aspects of genetic coding from this planet and from ourselves to make this slave race that we use as livestock. They have no worth. And that was kind of it. So, yeah. And they had their falling out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's definitely a good interpretation of the situation. So,
Mhm. I have another video. This one's a little longer, and this
okay.
attributes to El and Yahweh. It's entitled "The Two Gods of Israel," tying in to that Trinity factor that what may have potentially been a bilaterian idea in the precursor of ancient Israelite belief, eventual Judaism, that leads to the Christian notion of the Trinity reinforced at the Council of Nicaea and the councils of Nicaea and Constantinople. So let's go ahead and watch that a little bit, and we'll give our piece on it.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Bear with me. I'm retarded.
It's okay. I'm with NWO Wolfpack.
Yes.
Kick off with a revelation that could shake the very foundations of traditional beliefs. El and Yahweh were not always perceived as the same entity. Early archaeological discoveries suggest that these two figures were once distinct deities worshipped separately by the ancient Israelites. In the heart of ancient Canaanite culture, El stands as the supreme god, a majestic patriarch, the creator, the father of both gods and humanity. He's mentioned in numerous ancient texts and inscriptions, depicted as a wise and benevolent ruler presiding over a divine council. El was the epitome of authority and compassion, revered across the region. Meanwhile, Yahweh emerges from a different backdrop. Initial references place Yahweh in the southern regions, possibly originating from areas like Edom, Midian, or Sinai. Early inscriptions and texts hint at Yahweh being a dynamic warrior or storm god, a deity associated with power, might, and the raw forces of nature. What's groundbreaking is the evidence of polytheistic practices among early Israelite communities. Inscriptions unearthed from sites like Kantilit Ajrud and Kerbet Elkom mention Yahweh and his Asherah, suggesting that Yahweh was worshipped alongside a goddess consort. This challenges the long-held notion of ancient Israelite monotheism and paints a picture of a rich, complex spiritual landscape where multiple deities were acknowledged and revered. These findings have profound implications for our understanding of biblical history. They suggest that the journey to monotheism was not a straightforward path, but a gradual evolution influenced by cultural interactions, theological debates, and societal changes. The merging of El and Yahweh into a single, all-encompassing deity could have been a strategic move to unify the people, solidify religious practices, and strengthen communal identity. This isn't just an academic curiosity.
That's interesting that he mentions that, because you were just saying that, striving to build an identity, to create a solidarity amongst the people. So what do you think of that, Andrew?
Well, I mean, without a real identity of, it's hard to justify, your existence. You need to have an identity in order to, understand where you're at, where you're going, what your purpose is.
Understandable. Let us return.
It's a revelation that prompts us to reconsider the origins of some of the world's most influential religions. It raises pivotal questions. How did these two deities become one in the eyes of the worshippers? What roles did prophets and leaders play in this theological transformation? And how does this reshape our understanding of the divine narratives that have been passed down through millennia? Let's tackle a pivotal moment that redefined ancient religious landscapes, the fusion of El and Yahweh into a single, unified deity. This wasn't just a minor theological tweak, it was a seismic shift that laid the groundwork for monotheism as we know it. Imagine a world where El, the venerable creator god of the Canaanites, coexisted with Yahweh, a dynamic and rising deity among the Israelites. These two powerful figures didn't just fade into one another overnight. Their merging was a complex process influenced by cultural exchanges, political alliances, and shifting societal needs. As the Israelites settled and interacted with neighboring cultures, they began to integrate aspects of El into their worship of Yahweh. This wasn't mere happenstance. It was a strategic amalgamation that blended the supreme authority of El with the dynamic presence of Yahweh. By adopting El's attributes, Yahweh evolved from a regional deity into the singular, all-encompassing God of Israel. This fusion served a critical purpose. It unified disparate tribes under one national identity, strengthening them against external threats and internal divisions. It also provided a theological foundation that emphasized a personal and covenantal relationship between the Israelites and their God, a relationship that was unique and exclusive. What's particularly fascinating is how this transformation is reflected in the Hebrew Bible. Early texts often reference God as El, Elohim, or El Shaddai, names rooted in the Canaanite tradition. Over time, these titles became associated exclusively with Yahweh, signaling a deliberate shift in religious narrative and practice. This wasn't just a theological merger, it was a cultural revolution. By synthesizing the grandeur of El with the fervor of Yahweh, the Israelites forged a new understanding of divinity that was both deeply personal and universally sovereign. This redefined not only their spiritual life but also their national identity and destiny. How did a people surrounded by polytheistic cultures come to embrace the worship of a single, unified deity? This wasn't a simple overnight switch, it was a complex process fueled by social upheaval, prophetic vision, and revolutionary theology.
Very interesting. I'm slowing down right here because unifying two deities, that being of El, the supreme creator God, supreme, omnipresent, and that of Yahweh, kind of aligns with this fervor moment that gives you a little bit of a glimpse on perhaps the Christian idea of Jesus being there before Jesus with God in alignment as his essence.
In the business, we call this
Again,
foreshadowing.
in the beginning, yeah. So yeah, we do. And the greatest foreshadow was in the beginning of the Gospel of John. In the beginning, and to start Genesis, but in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. El, Yahweh, merger. Confluence right there. Where do we get the Holy Spirit, though? What can you explain to your perspective and your perception of what the Holy Spirit is?
I mean, I would say that the Holy Spirit is, in a way, it's pulling the strings to bring people together.
I mean,
It's just
actually,
sacred
that kind of
energy.
aligns. That kind of align. Honestly, I like that. I like that explanation. We just passed Pentecost recently, which was when the Holy Spirit filled into the hearts of through fire, into the hearts of the apostles and reawakened them, vigorating them with courage to go forth and spread the good news, the resurrection of Christ and God's new covenant of salvation that inevitably sparked a revolution that would lead to Christianity.
Yeah.
So you saying that, I like that. I like that explanation a lot because the Holy Spirit being the strings that pull it all, that attach and pull it all together with El and Yahweh, Jesus being the word, the essence of Yahweh. And it kind of aligns with that Trinity factor. I like that. Anything else to add, Andrew?
Oh man. Shout out to Master of Puppets. That's all I got to say.
Imagine living in a time when gods were tied to specific places, nations, or natural phenomena. The ancient Near East was a tapestry of deities, each with their own domains and followers. For the Israelites, surrounded by powerful neighbors with their own pantheons, the pressure to conform was immense. Yet, amidst this, a radical idea began to take root, the belief in one supreme God who was not just another deity among many, but the only true God. Key figures in this shift were the prophets, charismatic leaders like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Hosea, who boldly challenged the status quo. They didn't mince words when condemning idol worship and the moral corruption they associated with it. Their messages were not just spiritual, but deeply social and ethical, calling for justice, compassion, and a return to covenantal faithfulness. The geopolitical landscape played a significant role as well. Repeated invasions by Assyrian and Babylonian empires led to the destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel and the exile of Judah's elite. These cataclysmic events forced a theological crisis. Traditional beliefs couldn't explain the suffering and displacement. In response, a new understanding emerged. Perhaps these calamities were not defeats by foreign gods, but judgments from their own God, who demanded exclusive devotion. This period saw the redaction and composition of significant portions of the Hebrew Bible. Texts were reinterpreted or written to emphasize monotheism. The stories of creation, the patriarchs, and the Exodus were framed to highlight the sovereignty of one God over all nations and creation itself. The Shema, a central declaration of faith, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one," became a defining statement of identity. This theological evolution wasn't without resistance. There were tensions between traditionalists clinging to older practices and reformers pushing for monotheism. But over time, the monotheistic view prevailed, reshaping worship practices, societal laws, and cultural identity. The impact of this shift cannot be overstated. It laid the foundation for Judaism as a monotheistic faith and influenced the development of Christianity and Islam. The idea of one God became a transformative concept that would spread across continents and through centuries. Let's journey back to the heart of ancient Canaan, where the roots of El run deep and wide. El wasn't just another name in a pantheon, he was the chief deity, the father figure, the ultimate authority in Canaanite mythology. His influence permeated the spiritual and cultural fabric of the region long before the rise of Israelite identity. El was depicted as the father of years, a wise old ruler sitting enthroned, overseeing a council of gods. He was the creator, the one who set the cosmos in motion and ordained the laws of nature and society. His benevolence and justice were legendary, making him a revered figure not just among deities, but among mortals who sought order and guidance. Canaanite texts, like the Ugaritic tablets discovered in modern-day Syria, provide a treasure trove of insights into El's character and his dominion. These ancient scripts reveal stories of gods and goddesses navigating a world crafted by El's hand. He wasn't distant or detached. El was actively involved in the affairs of both gods and humans, mediating disputes and ensuring cosmic balance. The Israelites, emerging within this rich cultural milieu, couldn't help but be influenced by El's prominence. Early Israelite names like Israel and Bethel bear the mark of El, signaling a deep-seated connection. This isn't mere coincidence, it's indicative of a shared heritage and mutual religious concepts that transcended tribal boundaries. El's attributes, his wisdom, authority, and paternal care resonated with the Israelites. They saw in El qualities that reflected their own aspirations and understanding of the divine. This connection laid a foundation upon which their evolving concept of God could be built. It wasn't about copying, but about integrating and reinterpreting existing beliefs to forge a unique spiritual identity. The Canaanite influence didn't stop at mythology, it extended into rituals, symbols, and religious practices. High places, or Bamot, often associated with Canaanite worship, became sites where early Israelites offered sacrifices and sought divine favor. While later prophets would challenge and condemn these practices, their existence highlights the intertwined nature of Canaanite and Israelite religions in their formative years. Understanding El's origins isn't just an academic exercise, it's a window into how religions develop and adapt. It shows how the Israelites navigated a complex spiritual landscape.
Now,
I just want to say we live in a society.
we do live in a society, so that's
Thanks, Al.
that's horrible. We live in a society. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Mark chapter 14, verse 61 through 62. The high priest asks of Jesus, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus said, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man created at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." What does that symbolize? Kind of makes me think of L.
Yeah.
So the right hand of power. And then we go back to the ancient Canaanite traditions with their creator, all present, all knowing God of justice and everything. El,
Yeah.
who is he referring to? Obviously, he's referring to God. But
The
Jesus
reformer.
is God. Yes. But God, if Jesus is God in essence, and that is what he's saying. If you know, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed? I am, and you will see the Son of Man. Again, what did we articulate from this book, and what did Mr. Boyarin articulate? Daniel Boyarin articulate? Son of Man really referenced.
Well, like I said before, it's like it's an interpretation of passing the torch, right? Building momentum. You're gonna have to slow down eventually and pick back up. You can't go.
Mhm.
You can't run off top speed forever.
In Daniel's vision, um, he envisions the one like a son of man, for which would be a second divine character, and that is distinguished as in Canaanite culture the two deities of the God of justice, or in this case El or Yahweh, distinguishing that Yahweh may have possibly been, if El is the creator, then Yahweh may have been the God of justice. And then you start thinking, well, who is this? Who is this? The one like a son of man, divine figure that he's looking at, kind of warlike a little bit, right, in his vision. And so maybe
Yeah.
a god of war in Canaanite culture. And then you start thinking, well, in the Old Testament, you did have sequences of God's wrath. See, God can have wrath too. I mean, especially when you just go against it, you break every covenant in the book. Or,
Yeah.
yeah. I see all this as a human made and directed. That doesn't make either or both entities God. Or it does. Or it does. But I seek truth. Is there a God the way people speak of one? Apparently, there were many. It's interesting to say that because, and I look at it like this, or it does. But either I look at it like this: many cultures either deviated away from the one true God, the omnipresent, omnipotent, loving God. They just betrayed him, and that's reflected in the temptation of the garden. And human beings being corrupted through sin, they fell away. I mean, it's like a Tower of Babel scenario. I mean, they attempted to climb up to be as equal and high as God, but as they got higher, God smashed it, and all the peoples were dispersed across the land and were to speak many languages. And perhaps the paganism, pantheons of different pagan cultures, could be that of cultures trying to distinguish reality and at the same time also still sinning by not
Yeah.
accepting. And then on another end, if you want to go to another, I mean, it could just be maybe it's all a lie. Maybe there's many gods, or maybe the ancient astronaut theory is real, and we were visited by those who came from the heavens above, and they created us in their image to be a slave race. I don't know. I'm just here to search for truth as well, Mark. So um, I'd argue that many started with polytheism. I agree. And it does. A God to explain every phenomena: fertility, war, drought, the seasons, weather, death. I mean, you name it. Then the one God slowly absorbed and explained all of the phenomena. I love this stuff. We talk about so many things. Thank you.
Right.
We do. And I'm gonna plug. If you want to hear more and you missed it last night, go over to Not Conscious podcast on YouTube and Rumble or wherever the hell else you listen or watch your podcast. Me and Mark had a fantastic conversation last night, and we actually dived deep into this philosophical gobbledygook that we're trying to decipher, just like what me and Andrew are trying to do, and what Daniel Boyarin is trying to do, Boyarin is trying to do with the Jewish Gospels. What many people are trying to do, we're just trying to seek the truth, and it is in fact very biblical to question and try to articulate the truth. We are to investigate.
I mean, if in order to know, you had to question, right?
Yeah, nobody said God didn't say we can't
That-
seek knowledge. Holy shit! What the hell is going on down there, Kitty? But we're not.
Meow.
We don't need to. We can still seek knowledge, but we also have to understand that certain knowledge might not be correlated for us to know. We may not be able to. We may not even
Misdirection.
be allowed to know. Yeah, we may not be allowed to know until we're allowed to know, which could be
I
after
mean,
death.
they talk about that, right? In the Bible, it's the revealed truth.
Yes. So we continue on with our direction of El and Yahweh.
Sure.
Adopting and transforming elements to create a faith that was both familiar and revolutionary. El's legacy is a testament to the fluidity of religious identity and the ways in which cultural exchange shapes our deepest beliefs. Yahweh's origins likely trace back to the southern regions of the ancient Near East, areas like Edom, Midian, and the Sinai Peninsula. Early inscriptions and references outside the Hebrew Bible suggest that Yahweh may have started as a local deity associated with these territories. These regions were melting pots of cultures and ideas, which means the concept of Yahweh could have been shaped by a blend of traditions and beliefs. What sets Yahweh apart?
Actually, speaking of Midia, that's the tribe that Moses in Exodus would escape to and come across, which is and they themselves worshipped that one local deity that happened to be what we think of as Yahweh, which is very interesting that he brought that up. So
Part in this historical tapestry is how he rose from a local god to the primary deity of the Israelites. This wasn't merely about adopting a new figure into an existing pantheon, it was a radical shift that redefined religious and cultural identity. The Israelites were a confederation of tribes seeking unity and distinctiveness in a landscape crowded with powerful neighbors and competing deities. The elevation of Yahweh coincided with significant social and political changes. As the Israelites settled in Canaan, they were exposed to various religious practices. Yet, they gravitated toward Yahweh, possibly due to his association with themes that resonated deeply with their experiences: deliverance, covenant, and law. Yahweh wasn't just a god of storms or war, he was perceived as a personal deity who entered into a covenant with his people, offering guidance and demanding loyalty. Archaeological discoveries like the Tel Down stele provide external attestations to Yahweh's significance. This 9th century BCE inscription mentions the House of David and references to Yahweh, indicating that his worship was not only established but also recognized by neighboring cultures. Such evidence underscores the growing prominence of Yahweh in the region. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. The Hebrew Bible recounts numerous instances where prophets like Elijah and Jeremiah confronted the Israelites over their divided loyalties between Yahweh and other gods like Baal and Asherah. These confrontations highlight a period of religious tension and transition where the exclusive worship of Yahweh was still being solidified. What truly propelled Yahweh to the forefront was the unique relationship depicted between him and the Israelites. Unlike other deities who were tied to specific locales or functions, Yahweh was portrayed as a universal God with dominion over all aspects of life and the natural world. This universalism was revolutionary. It broke the mold of localized divine figures and positioned Yahweh as a God whose influence transcended borders. The narratives of the Exodus and the giving of the law at Sinai further cemented Yahweh's role. These stories weren't just religious myths, they were foundational accounts that linked Yahweh directly to the identity and destiny of the Israelite people. By framing their national history around Yahweh's actions and commandments, the Israelites forged a powerful connection that went beyond mere worship. It became a defining element of their very existence. The emergence of Yahweh also had profound ethical implications. His laws emphasized justice, compassion, and social responsibility. This ethical dimension set Yahweh apart from many contemporary deities and contributed to a distinct moral framework that influenced not only religious practices but also societal structures. Let's uncover some of the most intriguing and often overlooked passages in the Hebrew Bible that hint at the acknowledgement of multiple deities in early Israelite religion. Take Psalm 82, for instance. It opens with, "God stands in the divine assembly, he judges among the gods." Wait a minute, God's in the plural? This psalm portrays a scene where God is presiding over a council of divine beings. These aren't metaphorical entities, they're referred to as gods, suggesting a celestial assembly akin to those found in neighboring ancient Near Eastern cultures. Then there's Deuteronomy 32 verses 8 to 9. In some translations based on the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint, it reads, "When the Most High apportioned the nations, when he divided humankind, he fixed the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. The Lord's portion was his people, Jacob his allotted inheritance." This passage suggests that the Most High, possibly El, assigned different nations to various divine beings, with Yahweh receiving Israel as his special possession. Consider also Genesis 1 verse 26, where God says, "Let us make mankind in our image, after our likeness." Who is the "thus" here? Traditional interpretations might say it's a majestic plural or a conversation within the Trinity, but from a historical critical perspective, it could reflect an earlier belief in a divine council. The term Elohim itself is plural in Hebrew, though often used with singular verbs when referring to the God of Israel. However, its plurality opens the door to interpretations that ancient Israelites recognized a multiplicity of divine beings before consolidating their worship exclusively to Yahweh. These textual nuances point to a period when the Israelite religion was transitioning from henotheism, worshipping one God without denying the existence of others, to strict monotheism. This evolution didn't happen overnight. It was a complex process influenced by social, political, and theological factors. Prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah were pivotal in this shift, vehemently opposing the worship of other gods and emphasizing the sole sovereignty of Yahweh. Their messages were radical for their time, pushing against entrenched traditions and popular religious practices. What's the significance of acknowledging these passages today? It enriches our understanding of the historical and cultural context in which the Hebrew Bible was written. It shows that the path to monotheism was not straightforward but filled with debates, reforms, and revelations. By exploring these scriptures, we are not challenging the sanctity of the text but embracing its depth and complexity. We're recognizing that the faith traditions many hold dear today have been shaped by a dynamic history of ideas and beliefs. Let's delve deeper into the tangible evidence that brings ancient texts to life, the archaeological discoveries and inscriptions that illuminate the worship practices of early Israelites. One of the most significant archaeological sites is Kintilit Ajrud, an isolated settlement in the northeastern Sinai Peninsula dating back to the 8th century BCE. The walls of this site are adorned with inscriptions and drawings that have sparked considerable debate among scholars. Several inscriptions mention Yahweh of Samaria and his Asherah, and Yahweh of Teman and his Asherah. These phrases suggest that Yahweh was venerated alongside a goddess figure named Asherah, traditionally associated with El and other Canaanite deities. The depiction of Yahweh having an Asherah implies that the Israelites may have integrated aspects of Canaanite goddess worship into their religious practices. This challenges the notion that early Israelite religion was strictly monotheistic and devoid of feminine divine elements. Khirbet el-Khom, located west of Hebron in the Judean hills, is another pivotal site. Excavations in the 1960s uncovered tomb inscriptions dating to the late 8th century BCE. One of these inscriptions reads, "Blessed be Uriyahu by Yahweh, and from his enemies he saved him by his Asherah." Here again, we find a direct reference to his Asherah associated with Yahweh. This personal blessing suggests that individuals sought protection and favor through both Yahweh and Asherah, indicating that the veneration of a divine pair was part of personal religious expression. Asherah was a prominent goddess in Canaanite religion, often considered the consort of El, associated with fertility, motherhood, and the nurturing aspects of nature. Her presence in Israelite worship suggests a syncretism between Canaanite and Israelite religious practices. Artifacts such as wooden poles or carved trees, known as Asherah poles, are mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. Prophets frequently condemned their use, indicating that worship of Asherah was widespread and persistent among the Israelites despite official opposition. Further evidence comes from Tanakh, near Megiddo, where archaeologists discovered cult stands adorned with intricate iconography. These stands feature carvings of lions, cherubim, and sacred trees, symbols often associated with Asherah. While Yahweh isn't directly mentioned, the blending of these motifs suggests a fusion of worship practices. This paints a picture of a religious landscape where divine figures and symbols intermingled, reflecting a society open to incorporating diverse elements into their spiritual lives. The Elephantine Papyri, a collection of ancient Jewish manuscripts from a community in Elephantine, Egypt, dating to the 5th century BCE, provide additional context. These documents reveal that the Jewish community there acknowledged other deities alongside Yahweh. They built a temple to Yahweh that coexisted with the worship of Egyptian gods. This indicates that Jewish religious practices were not monolithic and could vary significantly based on geographic and cultural contexts. The Elephantine Jews maintained their identity while adapting to their environment, blending different religious traditions in a pragmatic approach to faith. Excavations throughout Israel have uncovered numerous figurines and amulets depicting goddesses and protective symbols. These items were likely used in household worship and personal devotion, suggesting that ordinary people sought the favor and protection of multiple divine figures in their daily lives. The widespread discovery of these artifacts indicates that polytheistic practices were deeply ingrained in the fabric of everyday life. Household shrines and personal idols tell a story of a populace that embraced a more eclectic form of spirituality than the official religious texts might suggest. The Hebrew Bible often reflects the perspectives of religious elites, priests and prophets who advocated for exclusive worship of Yahweh. However, the archaeological record reveals that popular practices were more diverse. The persistence of Asherah worship and other polytheistic elements indicates that the shift towards strict monotheism was gradual and met with resistance. This dichotomy between official doctrine and everyday practice highlights the dynamic nature of religious evolution. These discoveries have significant implications. The Israelites had a complex religious identity that included the worship of Yahweh alongside other deities, particularly female divinities like Asherah. There was a blending of Canaanite and Israelite religious practices, reflecting cultural exchanges and adaptations. The movement toward monotheism wasn't a straightforward path, but involved a dynamic process of theological development and social negotiation. This archaeological evidence challenges traditional narratives that depict ancient Israelite religion as uniformly monotheistic from its inception. It suggests that the biblical texts advocating exclusive worship of Yahweh were part of a larger effort to reform and standardize religious practices. Prophets like Hosea and Jeremiah, and reformist kings such as Hezekiah and Josiah, played crucial roles in this transition. They sought to eliminate polytheistic practices, destroy high places and Asherah poles, and centralize worship in Jerusalem. Their efforts highlight the tensions between official religion and popular practices, revealing a society in the midst of significant theological shifts. Scholars continue to debate the extent and nature of polytheism. Some that monotheism is much later and that earlier Israelite religion was inherently polytheistic. Others maintain that while popular practices included polytheistic elements, the core of Israelite religion was always monotheistic, with deviations seen as apostasy. This ongoing debate underscores the complexity of interpreting ancient texts and artifacts, emphasizing the importance of considering multiple perspectives when exploring historical religious practices. Engaging with this evidence requires a willingness to explore the complexities of religious development and to understand that faith traditions have evolved over time. Archaeology.
And just like that, we're breaking the fourth wall. As for the fourth wall, Mark says we are limited. Certain concepts escape us, like what a 4D shape looks like, which is effectively what we're breaking into right now. Is a 4D shape of the complexity of ancient cultures. I mean, you got to combine an identity, and it's very uniquely interesting. I mean, we have to be able to pry open and reveal what may have persisted then in order to understand the truth of now and in the future.
Well, I mean, context is important, but it isn't always available immediately. Sometimes you have to look back, right, in order to understand the context as it's unfolding. That way, you have a better perspective going forward.
It also paints you a different picture of one reason why, when the Israelites, after they came out of the desert, had to reconquer Canaan and effectively wipe them out for their practices. That could be taken as an allegory and literal. It could be literal as well, just because of the time frame that we're discussing and wars that occurred. And typically, you wiped out as much of the people of your enemies as you possibly could, so they couldn't rise up and come back at you. But it puts in perspective that perhaps it's more of an allegory towards the ancient Israelites pulling away from their old Canaanite polytheistic ways and converging into their own monotheistic dialogue. Again, it also opens up, as we continue with this series next week, going into the second chapter, waiting for what that has in store for us, the element of how the Trinity in Christianity came about, and how did we, yes, the Godhead with two arms, let's just put it that way. Two arms and a penis, I guess. I don't know. That was blasphemous.
Gotta get that joke in there. Yeah.
I mean, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and the Son's
hey,
in the
it's your
heart.
soul, not mine.
So, but yeah, the whole aspect of the Trinity can take its roots back to what it means as an essence.
Yeah.
And we're seeing as of now that perhaps there is more to the ancient Israelites and their core belief structures than just magically they're worshiping one God and they're the only tribe, the only nation of tribes on this earth that worship one God. So there's more to the story than meets the eye. And this is what's wonderful about the Bible is truthful in its historical context that you can explore with other accounts of historical context and try to combine it to fit like a puzzle. And you know how puzzles are, when you got that one piece, you're like, that last piece, you're like, this isn't fitting. How's it? What?
Yeah.
So, anything to say, Andrew?
I mean, I think this is definitely informative, and I really appreciate that we're going into this because, like I said, this isn't my particular area of strength, and the more you can learn, the better off I think you have. So
You said your
he's always
area of
got a
strength.
yeah, right.
So inflation is destroying civilization because it's depleting cultures and making us and forcing us to not look into truths like
It's
this that so we can expand upon the complexity of culture. So we can be better off and try to innovate and adapt. We're just mindless zombies chasing that dollar.
but I like being a mindless zombie.
Well, you're a mindless you retard.
A mindless fool. Okay, sounds good.
Full retard. Same thing. Same thing.
Yeah.
So, thank you everybody for joining. By the way, so if you could head over to if you're on YouTube or Rumble, follow, share this anyway, retweet if you're on X. Let's
Please, people,
go
I
ahead
want
and
hair. I'm tired of being
expand.
bald.
Stop being selfish. We want to embrace this message. So, man, for real, because I think if we talk about things like this, perhaps we can get everybody else to talk about this. Talk amongst your friends, your family, on the outside, and maybe get them to want to expand on trying to find truth, seek knowledge, open your mind. I don't care if you're a Christian, a filthy Edomite, Jew, Muslim, kind of little bit with the come to Christianity, Muslims, Hindu or atheist, agnostic, whatever. Let's explore. Let's seek truth. Let's find the knowledge of reality together. So that's the whole idea of both science and philosophy, right? Seeking
Yeah.
knowledge and finding truth. So philosophy is what, Andrew?
I don't know. The study of
Seeking knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seeking knowledge. Science is
Determining knowledge.
basically, yeah, determining
Proving
knowledge.
knowledge,
Science
yeah.
is science is determining. Philosophy is seeking. So you need a little bit of both. So thank you all for who have joined us live. We love you. So like I said, retweet this, share this, get this out, and we'll have another wonderful one next week. So anything that you want to jump into today, Andrew?
No.
We're hitting an hour and a half. I know that I know you got to go polish your balls and shine your head.
Well, if you love the audience and I hate them, I hate Elvis. Buy my stickers.
Why do you hate the audience?
I don't hate the audience. Not just being counterfactual, being a dick.
I have another video if you'd like to explore that real quick. If everybody has time. I think
That's fine.
I think it's another one too. Another good one that we can check out. Let's hold on.
I don't really hate the audience.
Dance for the audience. Show them that you love them.
Yeah.
About this inscription when I was reading a book by a well-known Egyptologist named Donald Redford, and he was writing about a site called Soleb, which is today located in the country of Sudan, but in ancient times it was part of the kingdom of Egypt. And here the pharaoh Amenhotep III built a temple and made a list of his foreign enemies. And the name of his book is Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in Ancient Times. And so he was discussing these inscriptions when he wrote, "For half a century, it has been generally admitted that we have here the name of the Israelite God, Yahweh, And if this be the case, as it undoubtedly is, the passage constitutes a most precious indication of the whereabouts during the late 15th century BC of the enclave revering this God. I was shocked. You mean to tell me that there is an inscription mentioning Yahweh that dates to the end of the 15th century BC? That's
Wild.
amazing. So I went to the library. I found the Soleb excavation report. This site was excavated in the 1950s, and there was the temple, and there was the inscription and the translation of the inscription. The inscription is written in Egyptian hieroglyphics. The first hieroglyph is the hieroglyph for land. The next three hieroglyphs sound out the word Shazu, which is translated nomads, land of the nomads. And then the last four hieroglyphs sound out a name. The first hieroglyph is the Y sound, then the house hieroglyph is the H, the noose is the W, and the bird is the A, the way. So together in the excavation report, they translate this name as Yahweh, land of the nomads of Yahweh. This I had to go see for myself. So I traveled to Sudan. I rented a four-wheel drive and a driver, crossed the Nile River on a local ferry, and spent the next 3 days driving on and off-road, camping in the desert, all to get to this temple and all to see this inscription.
Dance, Andrew. That is wild.
Okay, I'm here at the Temple of Soleb. I've traveled all the way to Sudan to come to this temple. This temple was built by Amenhotep III, and you can see these inscriptions that are covering these pillars. Let me find a really good one here. These are the ones that Amenhotep III is bragging about defeating. This man with his arms bound behind him, and then the name of that people, where they're from, and many, many place names, all in the same style. The one that I came all the way to see isn't as in good a shape as that one, but it's the most significant, in my opinion, of them. And it's on this pillar right here on the backside. It's right here. I've come a very long way to see this inscription, which from the Egyptian hieroglyphics reads, land of the nomads of Yahweh. It dates to the end of the 15th century BC. It's over 3,400 years old, and that makes it the oldest mention in an inscription of the name of the God of Israel. Here we have a perfect example of something that was found through archaeology, correlating perfectly with what we read in our Bibles. In this case, according to biblical chronology, the Bible says that the Israelites are wandering in the wilderness for 40 years at the latter half of the 15th century BC. Here we have an inscription from the Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep III that dates to the end of the 15th century BC. The Bible describes the wandering Israelites, the nomadic Israelites, as moving around with their God Yahweh, who is with them by day in a cloud, at night in a pillar of fire. And so what better way for the Egyptian Pharaoh, Amenhotep III, to describe this people than the way that he does right here, nomads of Yahweh.
That is
That's
wild.
wild. That is wild. Hey,
The
man,
question I have
I
is,
think
this stuff is so old. Why they just leave it out in the open? You think they'd be worried about it degraded,
it's
over time?
it's an archaeological site. So I mean, and sometimes the easiest way is to preserve it where it's at. So
Yeah.
people are going up there and doing the best they can, actually. So I think we're doing a better job in our modern day of age. I mean, that's what's interesting about our modern age is like we're able to kind of ascertain the the knowledge of the past a little bit more than what they. I mean, I don't know what it is, but perhaps as we've evolved technologically to where we have more leisure, you have more uh you have more pursuit for knowledge. So I don't know. And the Bible is one of those that everybody wants to either prove or disprove. So the fact that you find an inscription, land of a hieroglyphic telling of the land of the nomads of Yahweh is pretty wild, dating back to around the time that they should have been wandering. So, and the ancient Israelites were nomadic before they were truly settled.
Mm,
And so,
yeah.
which is very, very wild, very wild. But I mean, that does kind of divorce the narrative of it being found in the southern regions of the Nile, though. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's also an inscription by uh, the pharaoh at that time, so it's transcribing the description of an identity of a people that they recognize as worshiping a god named Yahweh, who are relatively nomadic. So I mean, it's not like it's like a settlement for the Israelites. So perhaps they were more further north, but they were so it's relevant because it proves that they were in Egypt.
It is pretty wild, man.
hmm So there's certain aspects of Exodus that you probably are going to get disproven, but there's portions of Exodus that it seems like is being proven. So if that's the case, and this really is an inscription that says "Land of the Nomads of Yahweh" in Egypt, dating to the end of the 15th century BC, they were in Egypt. Because I don't
It
know what
just,
else to say.
I suppose it's a matter of time preference, right? If you want the evidence, you're gonna have to be realistic and understand you're not gonna get, an answer immediately. Sometimes it takes long periods of time to get the evidence
hmm
to show up. So
Exactly.
longer
Just
than
like
your
what
existence.
Exactly, just like what we're doing right now. So, follow us next week, everybody. Come back next Friday. Uh, we'll be back at 11 a.m. Eastern. So, to end your morning on Friday, we won't be doing a 5 p.m., but we will dive into chapter 2 of the Jewish Gospels as we seek our own truth on following Daniel Boyarin to figure out if Jesus is the God Messiah.
Hmm. I'm looking forward to reading it and discussing it next week.
You have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And thank you for joining us. For those who joined live, thank you, Mark, for chiming in the chat and starting a conversation with us. And we'll see you on Monday. Well, we won't really see you on Monday because we're not actually live, but we'll see you on Monday for Legacy News. Have a good day, everybody, and have a blessed weekend.
Peace.
Peace.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gene Okerlund, and I'd like to welcome you to WCW Nitro.
You know, brother, you think you know what it takes to beat Hollywood Hogan, who wants to climb in the ring and try out the largest arms in the world. Hollywood style.
You want to wrestle an inch more Ric Flair, you gotta be able to walk that out and style and profile. Woo!
You really think you're ready for the
You really think you're ready for the Scorpion Deathlock? You think you're ready for a fatal encounter?
This is why they call me the total package. Do you have a pain threshold to withstand the butcher rack? Let's find out.
Hallo, hier ist Alex Wright. Wenn ihr High-Flying Wrestling Action wollt, Spinning Sidekick, Top Turnbuckle Dropkick, dann nehmt mich. Der Sieg ist euch sicher. Versprecht euch.
Oh yeah! Watch the flying elbow drop off the top rope. Not only beat people 1, 2, 3, but I hurt him real bad.
It only takes one of 1,000 holds. I think you're man enough for the challenge.
You better be ready to wrestle, because you know, when you get in the ring with Eddie Guerrero, it's going to be high-flying and exciting.
Hey, anytime you feel froggy, man, I'll slap on the buzz killer, rip your shoulder right out of socket. Wolfpack style!
Hey, funky boy. Like there's a choice here? Good God! Pick the man with the plan. Pick DDP.
Hey, all you suckers out there, you wanna play the game? You wanna play with the big boy? Put your feet on the button, cause when you go down 110th Street, it's gonna be on like neck bone, sucker.
This is Booker T from Harlem Heat, hardcore OG brother from 110th Street. If any of you punks got the guts to step up to the plate, push the button.
Yo, Chico, you selected Scott Hall? Get ready for a wild ride on the outside. Hey there! How'd you like to get power pop? Come on, take me. I'm begging you, take me.
You think you got the courage to step in the ring? I think you're gonna wind up with a snap neck from the choke slam.
Technical wrestler, high flyer, brawler. It don't matter what you consider yourself to be. When you're in the ring with the crippler, you're a loser.